What's up, everybody? It's Luke James, not the singer. If you're looking to contact me, you can hit up this email that's right here. But today you are tuned in to another episode of The Rundown, where I give you the rundown on a bunch of different projects. We don't go into too much detail here, it's all about giving you those quick opinions, so we're going to jump right into it, starting with Baby Keem's album, The Melodic Blue. Baby Keem, of course, is Kendrick Lamar's cousin, and back in 2020, I thought he was one of the more intriguing XXL freshmen. He also had a song called Gang Activities that sampled Super Metroid, so right out of the gate, he had my interest. I'll also say that leading up to this project, he did put out some fun bangers. We had Family Ties, this was a solid banger with high energy and meme-worthy flows from Kendrick, and even though I didn't like the tail end of Range Brothers, I thought there was a lot of other good things happening with it. You got some nice chemistry from Keem and Kendrick, as well as some heavy bass rolls, but that tail end is just brutal, man. It sounds like something you would find on the bad side of SoundCloud, and you got Kendrick on there sounding like an angry leprechaun, or an alarm clock that has a leprechaun setting, just going top of the morning, top of the morning, top of the morning, etc., etc. But, you know, the first 2/3 of that track were good, and I still appreciate the memes, man. We got lots of jokes and laughs out of that, so I appreciate that for what it is. But after listening through this full album, my thoughts on it are as scattered as the music itself, because this album is all over the place like an octopus doing finger painting, or you would call it tentacle painting if you want to be a fucking scientist about it. But let's get into some of the lows here. You have wonky horn production on Boo Man. I didn't care for that beat at all. One of the most boring beats of all time on South Africa, and a clunky croon track called Pink Panties. All these tracks really have typical rap fodder. There wasn't anything about the bars or what he was saying that stood out, and I thought these were some of the weaker moments with the production. The song Vent isn't much better, as Keem raps about his two phones. This two phones thing is something you will hear many times throughout this album. He goes on and on about it. And on this song, he compares his jewelry to booger-colored piss, which is one of the nastiest things I think I have ever heard, man. It kind of reminded me of that South Park episode where they had the book about the poop that took a pee, I think it was. Nasty ass shit. So these were some complaints right out of the gate. But there are certainly some highs here too. I don't think it's all bad. Trademark USA is a banger that has some charismatic flows on it. And even as a short track, I would say Scapegoats is one of the more focused tracks on the album. You're getting this vocal backdrop, and Keem is working some pretty nice flows on there that sounded great. I'd even say some of the croony, trappy tracks aren't that bad. Tracks like Issues with that hypnotic backdrop, Lost Souls, even though the beat doesn't go anywhere, I like the dreamy feel to it, and Gorgeous and Coco are fine as trunk slappers. But overall, I didn't come out of this project wanting to come back to too many of these songs. I will give it 6 top of the moans out of 10 though, because I didn't think this was awful, and it did keep my interest. There are these moments here that are intriguing. Some of the production is pretty cool. Keem certainly has charisma. He does work some nice flows, but this was just all over the damn place. I mean, he's only 20 years old, so there's a lot of potential still, but it made for an awkward listen, and I'd like to see what he can do on his next project if he's a little bit more focused and he can put out something that's more cohesive. So we are going to move on to the next one with AZ, Doe Or Die II, which is a follow-up to his classic from 1995, Doe Or Die. You know, I wouldn't put this one up on the same level as that one, because that one, as I said, is a classic, but there's still some great stuff happening here. I really like that single, The Wheel. We had Jaheim with great vocals and not wearing that purple-ass suit, and AZ was on this one reflecting on his decades in the rap game as he spits. Won't tell, been through it, been influenced, been a student, bossed up, this been a movement. AZ's flows throughout this album are just as crisp as ever, man. It's like lettuce in the bottom of your fridge in that crisper drawer. You know, I mean, well, I would say it's better than that, because that shit can go bad, but man, I'm just trying here. AZ is snapping on here is what I'm saying. He's got some great flows. As for the second single, Just For You, we have him spitting come-up bars over this lavish yacht rap beat from Bink, and this smooth production style is very prevalent throughout this album. You're going to hear that on a lot of tracks. You get more of it on Different, and this has some of AZ's best lines as he spits. Bullet wounds but still alive is too much to consume. For a nigga that's paralyzed, once a functional goon. Add all the tombs, 30 years can bring a nigga to tears. Neutralizing, numbing his care, can you imagine you there? This is what I'm talking about, man. Those flows are fucking crispy, and AZ is still dropping that OG wisdom. Now, as I was hearing all these lavish tracks, I kept thinking to myself, Rick Ross would fit perfectly on here, and of course he does show up on the song Never Enough. This is more of that luxury style rap. You get this beautiful sax production on there, and AZ spitting about the values of humility and self-knowledge, more of that wisdom, and Rick Ross has some dope bars when he spits, niggas tripping, I keep a pistol for Nipsey and Pac, small circle, you cross a line, and you put in a box. I thought that was just just a dope line from Rick Ross. He doesn't usually go too deep, but once in a while he does hit me with a line, and that was a solid one. The smooth vibes continue on Keep It Real. This reworks a sample of Bobby Caldwell's classic track, What You Won't Do for Love, and Bulletproof is your quintessential romantic rap and R&B track. One thing I will say about this album is, if anyone were going to critique it for not being overly creative or inventive or going too deep, I would certainly get that, because there are instances of genericism throughout, but I just think it still sounds really good, so I can't take too many points away. I love most of the production, the flows, as I said, are as crisp as ever, and you are still getting some content if you really listen to what AZ is saying, because he's been in the game for a long time. There are some grimier tracks on this album as well. Found My Niche is a gloomy track from the Czar Keys, where AZ is spinning tales from his past. He really gets vivid on this one. And Ritual delivers a brooding Alchemist beat to go along with great features from Conway and Maga Wayne. Conway, of course, sounds as good as you would expect him to on this Alchemist production, and I was impressed with Wayne, man. He does still have the usual type of content as he spits stuff about fisting women and pussy lips that give his dick a hug and a kiss, but he is flowing his ass off on here, and I would actually like to hear more of this Lil Wayne on this type of production. It's just like I say about Eminem. With Eminem and Lil Wayne, I would love to see them both just step outside of their comfort zone a bit, give us a short project, maybe work with someone like Alchemist or Havoc or Harry Fraud, Static Select or something like that, just something a little bit outside of the box and just rap your ass off. Give us some storytelling, some concepts, but now I'm going off on something else. Let's get back to this album, and I do give this album 7.5 consistent OGs out of 10. It's nothing too inventive, as I said, but it's so cohesive. It's a very consistent project, and it just sounds great. I could see this making my year-end list and coming back to it. You even get solid performances from Dave East on Below That Shit, and I gotta point out the classic production from Pete Rock on Check Me Out. There's a lot of good things happening here, so you check it out. And speaking of Dave East and Harry Fraud, let's talk about their project together called HOFFA. Of course, this one is named after the infamous Jimmy Hoffa, who went missing and no one knows where he is to this day. And I think this is one of the best projects. No, I will say it. This is the best project from Dave East. I always used to say Kyrie Chanel was his best project, but I think he's overdone it here. If you don't know who Dave East is for some reason, he's a New York MC who I think has had lots of ups and downs in his career. He's had good projects, but then he's put out some pretty bad ones as well. And Harry Fraud is just a super producer who's given us lots of gems lately. I mean, he's been working with all kinds of people, including Benny the Butcher, Jim Jones. I think his beats are kind of underrated, man. He deserves more love because he is having one hell of a year. So these two make a hell of a team like Animal and Hawk, and seeing them come together gave me exactly what I wanted. You are going to get the usual content from East on this album as he raps some street shit and tells his story, but in spite of that familiarity, I thought this album still came together really well. He's spitting some of his best verses, and his ear for beats with this project is just mwah, chef's kiss, fucking impeccable. On the Disappearance, he's rapping about his place in the rap game over this groovy sax backdrop, and on the jazzy 60 for the Lawyer, he's showing respect to people who had to do whatever they had to do to feed their family. Again, these aren't topics that you've never heard before, but Dave East's verses have great flows here. He's putting a lot of vivid detail and storytelling into these bars, and that's what makes it stick out. Like on I Can Hear the Storm, I did think this beat was pretty cool because you have a storm going on in the background to add to the feel of it, and here he's reminiscing over his upbringing. This is something he gets into a lot, even on the song Diamonds, where he goes even deeper in that second verse about growing up amongst dope and fiends being around. These are things that you may have heard from Dave East before, but he's doing it at the top level here. I mean, every rapper has that lane that they stick in, but once in a while they do it to the top. They do it A+, and I think that's what was happening on this one. I also got to point out Diamonds is one of my favorite beats on the album with these dope woodwinds and vocal chops. Harry Fraud was killing the production here. And there are some great features to talk about too. You have the song Uncle Rick. This has East and Benny spinning some dope tales over grungy guitar, and Currency is a perfect fit for the piano bar vibe on Red Fox Restaurant. This is one of those laid back vibes, features Currency, so you already know what it is. I also got to point out that French Montana, he wasn't that bad on Count It Up. I am not a big French Montana fan. Usually I don't like much of anything that he does, but he was fine on this song. It's a banger, and he delivered a catchy hook. So if you're looking for bangers and not just that typical, you know, kind of boom bap sample based stuff, you will get some of that too. There's that song. There's Just Another Rapper that has bass thicker than Sophia Rose, which is... if you know, you know, and the product was made for late night rides. So there is a bit of variety with the production. It's not all the same thing here, and that does help keep the project together. We also get Jim Jones on Money or Power. This beat is funkier than Month Old Laundry, and Crutch Calhoun, a name I'm not really familiar with, delivers a dope ass verse on the song The Win. This is another favorite beat on the album with those strings and bells that kick in, and Dave East had a nice line on here when he says, "It took a million losses just to fill a win." I know that's a lot of losses, but it is what it is sometimes, man. You gotta lose before you can win. So he's definitely winning on this one. I'm gonna give it 8. Dave East hitting a new peak out of 10. If you have been skeptical about Dave East in the past, I highly recommend you check this out because he has hit a new level. And up next we have Pete Sayke and Maja 7th with Crown. This is a project that's all about personal growth and not living on focusing on the validation from others. It's really about self-growth, self-improvement, and doing the best thing that you can for you. It's a great project that's straight to the point, it's not overly long, there aren't major skips, and Pete Sayke is a rapper while Maja 7th handles the production. They go together really well on this one to deliver a dope project. Under the Boldy Tree sets the tone as Pete is speaking on self-improvement and the values of therapy over a smooth vocal lace backdrop, and Old Head works well as a follow-up. I really appreciate this track because it's all about how you can learn from older people if you just put your pride to the side. Just shut up and listen sometimes, because there is stuff you can learn from people who have already been there and done that. I really do appreciate how all these themes come together on this project, and Pete is great at bringing his own life into this as well, like on the song The World, where he raps about moving on from the immaturity and arrogance of his past in order to do better. That's something a lot of us can do. I know I certainly work on that all the time, so this is something that did stick with me, and I think there are other lines and themes that are going to stick with other people. I also got to point out the features on here that are dope. The Marta has excellent vocals from Bubby B that fit the neo-soul feel of the beat, and this song has Pete spitting about how he went from sleeping on friends' couches to having his own place. It is all about that growth and self-improvement. This is one of those projects I think you can listen to for inspiration and really take something from it. So if that's something that you want, positive, uplifting hip-hop that has a good vibe throughout, this is a project that you are not going to want to sleep on, because it did that for me. The title track Crown features Bubby as well. You're getting high quality verses from Fillmore Green and Pete there too. And Amari Simone sounds as sweet as Canadian syrup on the groovy track Big Girl Sings. Pete has some more great lines on here as he spit. Could spend the whole life chasing things that I don't need, racing this rat race, passing flowers, and don't breathe. That's a dope line, because the older you get, the more you got to learn to just slow down, appreciate the time you have, smell those roses, don't get caught up in things, don't overthink things, don't stress everything. This is just a dope project, man. I'm going to give it 7.5 hidden gems out of 10. The features are great, the production is great, the bars are great. I wouldn't say there's anything too incredible sonically that's like going to change the game or set the world on fire. But again, just like I was saying about some of these previous projects I've reviewed, it all comes together well, it sounds dope, and makes for a great album. So check this one out, do not miss it. And up next we have Boldy James and the Alchemist with Bo Jackson. This one, of course, is named after the legendary sports icon and one of the stars of Pro Stars, if you remember that. Now, I don't gotta break this album's style and sound down too much, because you already know what it is when you see Boldy James and the Alchemist. You're gonna get those creeping, slow, drowsy flows from Boldy James over grimy beats from Alchemist. It's a tried and true formula that works for him, it works for Griselda most of the time, so if that's the sound you want, that's what you're gonna get. You're not gonna get anything different. If you have been getting kind of bored of that, I don't know if you're really gonna love this, but the bars are endless, and that's what helped uplift it for me. On the song Double Hockey Sticks, you get this piano that reminds me of the Halloween theme, and Boldy does spit some bars that match, as he says, ice wires, diamonds cutting up like a Mike Myers. Then on Turpentine, or do you say it Turpentine? I don't know, I forget, man, I'm fucking up here. But anyway, we get a groovy bass line and peak 90s bars when he says, really she a ballerina, boy met world after Topanga, told me she loved dirty dancing, we did the Macarena. That is some serious throwback shit right there. Some of you might remember how to do the Macarena, you know, side to side, head to head, all that type of shit. Topanga, of course, one of the original 90s thick sitcom chicks. I'm just saying this back when I was in the 90s, man. I know everybody had a thing for Topanga, so I certainly appreciate that. And on this song here, you also get an interpolation of BG's song Hard Times when Boldy raps, hard times, got a nigga in all black. Chopper City in the Ghetto is a southern classic in my eyes. I know people sometimes shit on Cash Money and BG and some of the other artists, but that is a damn good album. I highly recommend it if you want to check something a little different. I also thought it was cool how Boldy James, who does this style, is referencing something from New Orleans, something like that. Like, there's such a different style when you think of this album and that album, Chopper City in the Ghetto. So I thought that made for a cool moment. And we do get more great lines on Steel Wool. Boldy says, playing Tetris with them blocks, why they call me Lego, down in Virginia for real, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Has anyone found this crazy motherfucker? Does anyone know where Carmen Sandiego is? What is she hiding, man? We gotta get the warrant. I know some of you remember that from back in the day. If not, then you just have no idea what I'm talking about when I say the warrant. Da 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 da. I still remember that show. I used to watch that shit. But moving on, we get the hypnotic track Diamond Dallas, where Boldy is bossing like Tony Danza and taking heads like Highlander. Of course, this track is named after DDP, the wrestler turned yoga master, so I thought that was pretty cool, but I didn't really care for the Stove God Cook's hook on there, so I wouldn't put that as one of my favorite tracks. There are some other moments that I didn't really love either, like on Speed Trap, where in spite of the MapQuest reference, the drums on this are stumbling around like someone that drank 3 quarts of Jägermeister, so I would put that as one of my least favorites. If I put favorites and least favorites in the rundown, which I don't, but I'm just telling you, that's how it is. You also get a quality feature from Benny, who's working some fast flows on Brick Mile to Montana, where he put a bitch in a White House way before Kamala Harris. That line made me chuckle. And Currency and Gibbs add personality to the song Fake Flowers. I think Gibbs absolutely snapped on here, as he dropped some Michael Jordan meme bars spitting, "Nigga, fuck them kids, I ain't your mentor or your role model, and if you're old enough to hold a strap, I'll have your baby working." So clearly, it is the bars throughout this project that make it work. The production's cool, it's nothing too new. Boldy James's flow can get a little bit boring at times in my opinion, but I'm still going to give this 7 pro stars out of 10, because it is what it is, man. It's an enjoyable project. I like that we get so many lines here that are going to stick with me, so check it out if this is your style. Now, another album that fits the mold of this Boldy James and Alchemist album that I just talked about is Westside Gunn with Hitler Wears Hermes. Is it Hermes or Hermes? 8, Sincerely Adolf. I know Hermes is a Greek god, that's how you pronounce it, but then isn't the fashion thing pronounced Hermes? I think, I don't know, I'm not a scholar. I'm messing up my pronunciation and a lot of words in this review, and I'm really not coming across as that smart. But this album is basically a Westside Gunn and Friends album. You can tell by all the features that are on it. And just like the Boldy album, I'm not even going to go into a lot of detail here. You already know what it is. It's that Griselda sound. Westside Gunn still has that unique voice. He has a lot of fun ad-libs. If you're into that, that'll keep you interested. He's making wrestling references, pop culture references, lots of gun sounds. You know what he does. And it's a usual brooding boom bap sound that you've come to expect from Griselda. So it's nothing new. I actually found the production on this to be a little bit dull in spots. And really it was the features that stole the show on this thing. I think Rome Streets was great every single time he popped up, including on Perry Perry where he spits, "We with wild niggas that'll spray you up like a barber after a cut." And you also get Jadakiss sounding right at home on Right Now. But again, Mega Wayne had a nice line on Bash Money when he spits, "My homie in the back, masked up like Lucha Libre." Shout out to Rey Mysterio, Ray Phoenix, La Parca, Juventud Guerrera. I could go on and on. I thought that was a great line. And of course, you get the usual suspects throughout with Benny, Conway, Makami, Boldy James, Stove God Cooks, etc., etc. But I just really don't have a lot to say about this one, man. There wasn't much to take away from it. I'm going to give it a 6 same old out of 10. There's not a lot of variation here. I guess it all just depends on your Griselda fatigue and where you're at. I feel that way every time they drop an album. Sometimes I care, sometimes I don't, sometimes a certain album hits, sometimes it won't. There's a couple of bars for you. But this is one of those ones that just sounds like another typical Westside Gunn project, so it didn't really stick out to me, but I'm curious to see what you guys think, because I know some people are hardcore Griselda fans, and yeah, we'll see what you guys have to say. Now up next we have Dan Lee with Dojo 2, Vox Populi, and this was a really dope listen. I've actually reviewed some of Dan's music in the past, and I've loved some of the tracks that he's given us, including the song Batman. This is an older track of his that I have talked about on past reviews, but is also featured here. It's just this banger where he's comparing the art of robbing to Batman, which I thought was a really creative idea, and it's these creative ideas and concepts that make this project work, especially the song Ode to an AK. This track is an immediate highlight, as Dan is on here rapping about the history of the AK-47. There's also a soft backdrop here that makes for a nice contrast, so this song came together really well and is easily in highlight. Dan also delivers some very relatable tracks too, like on Support is a Superpower. This is one of my favorite tracks with the groovy bass and keys. You're also getting a nice vocal performance from Yasmin Matri, as Dan raps about the power of being there for each other. Very simple idea, just supporting people, uplifting them, but this is something that people need to hear, and I appreciate that he put it into a song. It's one of those songs that's very positive. It is going to help uplift people, and that's something that can go a long way, especially in these COVID times, man, because shit is all fucked up. Now with the song Rough and Tough, he's showcasing his storytelling skills over a sax backdrop as he breaks down various life problems, and Addiction is a thorough track about the dangers of various vices, including money and drugs. I especially like on that last verse when he's rapping about social media as a drug, because we all know how it is, man. I quit Facebook a year ago because it was getting to be too much, and I've even been on the fence about Twitter and Instagram. There's just so much shit we're constantly downloading into our brains every day. Are we supposed to be taking in all this information? Is it making us lose focus? Is it causing anxiety? I think it is. I know it fucks with me sometimes, so this was a track that really hit me, and I'm just appreciating all the different ideas that he's getting to on this album. He doesn't overcomplicate things, he does get right to the point, but that's what makes it stick, and I think that's what is going to connect to a lot of different people. You also get an introspective Smokers anthem with Blow to Smoke, an ode to anime, video games, and more on Trip to Japan, and a very soulful and potent track called Ready for War. This is a track where Dan is speaking on the state of society and how we all need to come together and work together. This is a very positive project, man. As I'm just sitting here reading my breakdown and just listing it off to you, I'm realizing there's a lot of stuff to get into. So needless to say, Dan covers a lot of bases on this project. He does it very well. He's a solid rapper. I wouldn't say his flows and style are overly unique or crazy, but it gets the job done. And I like the production here, man. The beats are dope, the concepts are dope. I'm going to give this one 7.5 Batman's beating you upside your head out of 10. Check it out, man. We got some hidden gems happening right here in this rundown. So I hope you guys give all these a listen. And up next we have Jason Flame with It's Always Been There. And this one was a bit of a frustrating listen because the ideas are there, but the execution isn't overly great. It's a project that puts off mellow, good vibes like the dreamy production on Float Away 2 and the gentle banger Zone, but Jason's performance is mostly quiet and drowsy throughout, and that sometimes causes it to be overpowered by the production. I think better mixing in particular would improve a lot of these tracks because the mix isn't a 10 out of 10, most notably on Please Don't Take My Peace Away. So there are lots of little things here I think he could work on in order to make a huge difference. I do, however, appreciate that there's a thoughtfulness happening on this album. Throughout the album he's introspective, so there are memorable moments with the content, like on Hilltop, for example. I do like the hazy keys on this beat, and Jason is speaking on the frustrations of police brutality and how it's constantly shoved in our faces, man. You see it all the time on social media. Kind of ties into what I was just saying about social media, how we're constantly taking all this stuff in and how it can hurt us, it can harm us more than it helps us. So that's something that I appreciate from him on this project, that he is addressing certain ideas and he is getting introspective. The spacey banger Namek provides more solid moments. You get some catchy flows here and bars about the drudgery of working retail. Clearly that is something we're all going to be able to relate to. I'm on my way to 40 and still working in retail, so fuck, I feel what he's saying there. And as you can listen through this, you can just tell that he's a young man trying to figure things out. I think he's still trying to figure it out with this music thing too, because again, the ideas are there, just the execution needs to be tightened, man. I think if he could fix that mixing and mastering up a little bit, maybe go a bit deeper with his ideas, also work on those vocals too, because I feel like the vocals in a lot of spots, as I mentioned earlier, are quiet and drowsy and just not overly enjoyable, man. You'll notice this on I'm Still Here. You're getting this gorgeous guitar and piano backdrop, but the vocals are so shaky on this thing. I mean, I understand the sound that he's going for, kind of laid back and vibey, a little bit of croakiness perhaps, but it just doesn't really come together too well here. But again, that could be partly due to the mixing and mastering. But I did also like on How Do You Feel, you have one of the best beats, and Jason has some of his best flows here, so I want to be sure I'm pointing out the good and the bad. It's just one of those projects that, as I said earlier, is very frustrating. So there's a good base to work with here, but plenty of opportunities for growth, so I give it 5 rooms for improvement out of 10. You just need a bit of refining here to really put things together, but that just takes time, and honestly that comes with more experience and repetition, so we'll see what happens there. And lastly, we are going to finish this with Larry June's Orange Print. And man, this was a really intriguing listen to me because I remember hearing Larry June years ago and not liking him at all, but now he's making this really smooth, vibey, wavy music, and I absolutely fucked with this project, so it was one of the best surprises this year for me. I'd say this album is at its best when Larry is blending that rapping with singing on tracks like Wait On Me. This is a very catchy song. I love that hook, has a smooth backdrop, it's going to be an earworm. And also 6 a.m. and Sausalito. I got some low-key Nate Dogg vibes from Larry June singing on this. I know that is sacrilegious to say, but that's just kind of what I was feeling. You get another velvety smooth backdrop in here, and I didn't even know what Sausalito was. I had to look it up. That shit to me sounded like a pasta-based Pokemon, like Sausalito, go! But no, it's a city, so again, I'm proving how dumb I am in this rundown episode, but it is what it is. So those 2 tracks, Wait On Me and 6 a.m. and Sausalito, those are 2 of my favorites. I also really liked Grand Nash Chronicles. This beat is beautiful with those strings that come in. You have one of the most underrated rappers on here, in my opinion, Trey the Truth. His raspy voice fits perfectly. So these are the moments where Larry June is really shining, but there are a couple moments that took away from this project for me, man. The song Organic Respect has sloppy flows over a generic DJ Mustard style beat. This was the weakest track on here, I think. And Still Cookin' is a bland banger with even more bland rapping. I don't know what it is on this project, but once in a while Larry June's rapping is just not up to par. Other times it's fine. I like when he does the singing thing, but on some of these tracks the rapping leaves much to be desired. I'd even say that on the song You Gotta, where his rapping isn't overly memorable, but you get some wavy Cardo production, so it does help uplift it. And you know what? The production does a lot of the work here, along with that singing. That's what I really like from this project, the Orange Print. I also thought Iced Coffee was tremendous. This has a beautiful contribution from Jake One. I believe he just did a Breaking Down the Beat episode of this, so you can check that out on YouTube. And Intercepted is another standout because of that sample flip. I cannot place it, but it sounds like it's from an anime, so please let me know if you know what that sample is from. Really dope track. I like a lot of these beats here, man. I also got to point out that Money Man, which is one of the most generic names I've ever heard, but Money Man, he has a dope ass hook on Intercepted, so that was a plus too. And I'm going to give this one 7.5. Larry June is back on my radars out of 10. This was a really dope project. It's nothing out of the ordinary with the content. I'm not going to say the rapping and lyricism is elite, but for this lane, just driving and vibing, It is well worth a listen, so check it out for yourself. Check all these projects out. Let me know down below what you think. This was a long-ass episode. I'm going to wrap it up now, man. I'm tired. I got shit to do, but I'm excited to discuss with you guys in the comment section. So make sure you do all that good YouTube and social media stuff where you show me love and you show me lots of it. Thank you for watching, everybody, and I will see you next time.